sometimes we just like to exaggerate things, and like we just want to find a term and then we are enemies with that term. Same with MQS. Some people just hate MQS and they just call them, I don't know, high intent demo request hand raisers. I don't know, very high qualified, very hot things. Like it doesn't need to be like that. We don't need to be over engineering stuff.
All right, we're live and we already have people joining in, which is always awesome to see. Before we get started, what I'll do is I'll get some logistics out of the way. We have a poll that we're running, so we know who's in the audience and we can tailor the conversation. So please make sure you answer the poll. We promise not to ask too many questions, but instead give you the opportunity to ask questions to Canberk. Drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. We want to keep this, like I said, we want to keep this conversational and we want to keep this super engaging. If you have any questions, please shoot them in the Q&A tab, and I'll make sure we pop that up on the stage and we can get that answered, right? With that said, I think we have the poll already live in the poll section. With that said, what I'll do is I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Vikash. I lead the marketing team over here at Revenue Hero, and Masters of Revenue is our virtual summit where we bring in leaders and practitioners who've driven pipeline and revenue for their organization, and have them share their strategies that they are seeing work, so that we can walk away with playbooks that we can all implement at our organization, right? On those lines, I have with me Canberk Beker, who leads growth at HockeyStack. Like I'm sure we've all seen his posts on LinkedIn. We've all seen the report they're constantly publishing. I'll let Canberk quickly introduce himself and talk a little bit about HockeyStack, what HockeyStack does before we get into it.
Hi, Yukash. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Canberk and I'm leading the growth at HockeyStack. And before HockeyStack, I was at Cognism as the group global head of paid. Before that, I was in the position as the head of growth in a B2B SaaS company. And again, growth. It's been all about growth for me. And what HockeyStack does is basically we are connecting every touch point in the customer journey. And we basically unify the data and help you to reverse engineer your funnel so that you can identify your revenue leak, you can identify what is working, but also what is not working and what works to what extent. So like I'm trying not to call it an attribution tool, because then you basically compete with all of the companies which offer like 10% of your product. So like we are trying to create this category, the command center, and we are basically trying to unify the entire data points in the customer journey.
Amazing. Canberk, I want to start off with a fun question before we get into the topic itself, right? I'm sure we've all had an account manager from either LinkedIn ads or the Google ads, right? And reach out suggesting changes. Hey, make this change, make that change. You'll see better results. Have you ever implemented the suggestions, and have you actually seen it work?
Well. So with Google people, never. With Facebook people, never. But I think, there's a line in every marketer's life that you first believe that they are telling the truth, they are trying to help you out. Like when you are all pure and you want to believe them, and then you believe them, you get all of your numbers fucked up, and then you're like, okay, they weren't trying to help me out. They were just trying to help themselves. With LinkedIn, it was the same, but I think with LinkedIn, it also depends your account. Like before Cognism, my account managers were like Google account managers. But with Cognism, we were spending like a mil every month. So like we were getting the best treatment. And honestly, we had like 2 account managers back at Cognism. And those account managers were actually trying to help. Like they understood what kind of person I was, because I also have always been very direct and very blunt to them. And I was very open in telling them my previous experiences with other LinkedIn account managers. So they were really helpful. With HockeyStack, obviously, we are not spending a meal every month, but now I know people at LinkedIn. So the first thing I did when I joined HockeyStack was that, okay, I know we are not in this tier, but I know what I'm eligible. So like I want this kind of an account manager, and now we have one of the best account managers in the tier. So yeah, now it is all well. However, yeah, like with Google and with Facebook, it has never been good, and I don't think I will ever find a proper account manager there.
I'll be honest, I tried my best trying to communicate to one of our Google ad account manager, telling them, hey, this is what we do, this is what we're trying to achieve from Google Ads. I understand where you're coming from. I understand what's the like your perspective of like why you're suggesting these changes, but there's no way like I can make this change with the budget that I have, right?
And
And like
yeah, like probably they say broad match, and that has been the biggest issue. Like especially at Cognism, I was like, if you tell me broad match, I'm never going to have a call with you, I said, and they thought I was joking. And at one point, he was talking about broad match again. I just left the call, and I never see him again.
Got it. With our LinkedIn Ads Manager, I think we've had better success. I think, like you mentioned, right? I think they're a little bit more understanding from what I've seen. Like if we ask them for specific data points and things like that, they're able to provide us that, and I think that has been like super helpful. I think. It also boils down to like what sort of questions you ask them at the end of the day, and they're able to give that data points to you if they have it, right? So I think that was like pretty pleasantly surprising for me, especially after the experience I've had with Google Ads managers and Facebook managers. So
Yeah, and I think it is also about the foundation of that platform. Like LinkedIn's foundations are B2B. Therefore, they are really helpful for B2B. They understand B2B. But probably B2C people are telling the same stuff about LinkedIn as we say Google. But yeah, when we think about Google and Facebook, their foundations are on B2C. And unfortunately, they cannot just move away from those foundations. They will be a B2C first company all the time.
yeah, makes sense. Cool. I know we're here to talk about like what does it take to scale a demand gen program. But obviously, I've been following you on LinkedIn for a very long time, right? Before we get into it, if I remember correctly, at one point, my LinkedIn feed was full of folks from Cognism and you talking about like how we moved from lead gen to demand gen and how it has been like super helpful, and the kind of results you saw with it as well, right? But very recently, if I remember correctly, I think you also posted on your LinkedIn profile talking about like how lead gen might actually be helpful if you're thinking about it more from an owned media perspective, and instead of trying to push those leads to your sales team and trying to drive revenue from it, right? Can you talk a little bit about that, and can you expand a little bit around that?
Sure. Like I think again, when if we take a step back, it feels like sometimes we just like to exaggerate things, and like we just want to find a term, and then we are enemies with that term. Same with MQS. Some people just hate MQS, and they just call them, I don't know, high intent demo request hand raisers. I don't know, very high qualified, very hot things. Like it doesn't need to be like that. We don't need to be over engineering stuff. And same with lead gen. Like I still believe that lead gen in the modern world does not work. And for the sustainable success, it will come from demand gen. However, the demand gen, as we know, as we consider, is that, and we can still reposition it, and we can still make it work. And when we think of the fundamentals of it, there would be a lot of resemblance to traditional lead gen, but it doesn't need to be lead gen, because lead gen is focused. The traditional lead gen is focused on getting the leads and selling them directly, trying to sell them directly. However, if we just consider those leads as like people who might be ready to buy like in a year, but who just want to know about your brand, but not about necessarily your product. We can actually make it work, like similar to a remarketing audience in a way. Like if if you create a remarketing audience from the people who engage with your LinkedIn campaigns, it doesn't mean that those people are going to be converting right away, but it means that those people are engaging with your content and they're actually more warm, they're warmer than the cold audience. But you don't just send those people to your salespeople. You would expect them to raise their hand. And we can use the same approach for this model. Like when you think about it, you can just run a couple of webinar series just like this one, or like you could be running I don't know, like HockeyStack Labs. They can just subscribe to Labs content. It doesn't mean that you are going to be sending all of the webinar registrants to your salespeople, or like I'm going to be sending all of the subscribers to my salespeople. But we can just use this audience to talk about what they sign up for more. Like if they sign up for the labs content, okay, we can just send them the labs content maybe a couple of days before we launch the content. Or like you can just send them this recording, or like maybe you can just send them the snippets of this recording or the content of it. But we can still use this audience. Like it doesn't mean that if you collect emails, you are doing lead gen. And I think we came to a world where if we ask an email, they automatically assume that we are doing lead gen and we are getting boo. And I think that approach is wrong. And that approach is more about how do you use the lead gen methodology. And that's what I'm trying to experiment with right now.
Nice. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, I think especially based on what I'm seeing on my LinkedIn feed, right? Like, if you say that, hey, if you're trying to promote your event and if you're trying to, collect email IDs and things like that, people are like immediately like, okay, hey, like, why are you doing that? Like, lead gen doesn't work. I'm like, no, that's not the point of it. But the pushback that I often hear is like, why don't you do it directly on? Why don't you do a LinkedIn Live instead? Like, why do you still have to ask for the email ID and things like that? But I get where you're coming from. I also get where they're coming from, but I think the thought process, I think Legion has been sort of like positioned as like this villain, right? And I think we've gone like to the other extreme of it and like just bashing it just for the sake of it.
Yeah, like when you think about it, every revolution creates their own enemies. And demand generation has been a revolution. Uh, and the enemy has become the lead generation. And yeah, like lead generation is considered like a thing that I don't know, that doesn't work, which is mostly true. If you do lead generation in the traditional the way it doesn't work. But also I also understand where my audience comes from, and I'm actually one of those audience. Like in order for me to give my email, it needs to be an exceptional content, because even though like they claim that they're not going to do anything, there's like 99% chance that a couple of weeks later I'm going to get called by an SDR, or like I'm going to be getting some weird emails by an SDR. And at this point, like if that happens, I don't even read the email. I just unsubscribe and block the domain. However, I just don't want to come to that level. And the audience knows that. Like the audience has been treated like this, and like in most of the cases, when they give the email, they get reached out by an SDR, and you cannot really blame them. But when we think about it, like we need to have the shift, and most of the companies are gearing away from the traditional lead gen approach, at least in the startup environment. But unfortunately, when we think about enterprise, they will always be doing enterprise. Like we know that we can never get Microsoft to do demand gen, or like Oracle to do demand gen. But if I think enough startups move away from that traditional lead gen methodology, it will in the long term impact the people's mindset, which then they will think, okay, they are not going to be reached out by a random SDR in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it needs to be a shift, and I don't think it will happen anytime soon.
Awesome. I think if I have to sort of like sum it up, right? If you're if you're collecting email IDs, if you're running Legion campaigns, if you're going to follow up with them, please follow up with some valuable content or something that they subscribe to, right? If they subscribe in your in the example that you gave, if they subscribe for HockeyStack Labs, probably follow up with more HockeyStack Labs content and not like sort of like uh, share the email ID to an SDR and start an outbound sequence from there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right. Cool. So I like to. I think we've been talking about Legion, demand gen a lot already. Before we even got into the meat of the topic, one thing that I've been seeing a lot very recently is I think there's this perception of like, okay, hey, if you have to run demand gen, right? Uh, it somehow equates to, okay, hey, let's run ads on LinkedIn, right? But it's not just that, right? Can you talk a little bit around like how you think about what demand gen actually means, and then we can dive a little bit more into like, okay, this is what demand gen means. Now, this is how you think about scaling this.
I think if we think about the fundamentals of demand generation, like the foundation of demand generation, it is about creating a media machine where you are reaching out to your target addressable market anywhere. But obviously, one company cannot just build a media machine like that. They cannot create YouTube content like that. It is a long process. And to be fair, most companies don't even want it because it is actually not easy to understand. There's an investment there, or like it is really hard to sell this to executives. And when you say demand gen, when companies start to demand gen, LinkedIn is the starting point, and I can understand the reason behind it. Because if again we think about the fundamentals of demand gen, we need to be reaching out to our target addressable market. We need to be penetrating the target addressable market, and the place that allows us to do this the most is LinkedIn. We cannot just reach out to these people on Google. We cannot just do this on Facebook or any other platform. LinkedIn has the monopoly, and unfortunately, that's the truth. And there is no other company that is close to LinkedIn. Uh, but I think when we start demand generation on LinkedIn, we also need to understand how we need to start. Like it is not about running campaigns for, I don't know, conversion, running campaigns for your demos. We need to understand that demand generation should be about creating the brand awareness, educating the audience within the feed. Like that's why I'm really bullish about no-click content. Like your audience is obviously they are immune to all of the ads on LinkedIn, and in order to make your audience click on that ad, you need to try really hard. Like nobody will click on an ad of a company that they don't know. Therefore, the demand gen 101 should start with creating proper in-feed content where audience can just consume the content, learn about you, learn about the product, learn about the problems that you solve, and then this audience needs to be fed with the proper partnership content and the blog content. And at that point, we can now target people to come to your website. But unfortunately, most of the companies have this problem, make that mistake. When they think dimension, they think let's run a campaign and maximize our website traffic, maximize our high intent page visitors. It is the second, or like it is the third step. We cannot just assume that those people will be clicking this. We need to be creating that brand, and that brand needs to be created by really easy to consume content, and the content that uh, clearly demonstrates what your product does, how you solve the pain points, and how you can help them. But you don't need to be asking them to click the content to learn more. Like they need to understand the content within the feed.
Makes sense. I think it sounds like content plays a significant role in this entire demand gen as a function, right? I think too many times what I see is like performance marketing and content are like almost siloed, right? Content teams are like creating content like for SEO purposes, or probably repurposing some of the content that they've already created and that sort of stuff. And then performance marketing team or the demand gen team is running their own campaigns. Like, how do you sort of think about making sure the two teams sort of like work together and sort of like feed off of each other's activities?
Well, I think we did a really good job at Cognism for this. Like the marketing team had 50 people there, and the way that the demand generation team and my team were working, it was actually pretty healthy and it was pretty effective. And as you said, like the content team is most of the time responsible for SEO. But for example, at Cognism, we had two type of content team: a content team for like website SEO and a content team for demand generation. And that the content team for demand generation and demand generation team would work with my team closely, in which in every other week, my team and I would create a report to show what is happening on the channels, what we are observing, and what kind of S we need, or like what kind of S we don't need. And then, depending on what we report on, then the demand generation team would work on the content. And like if we say that kind of content doesn't work, they would just kill that team and they would work on a different team. And then their content team, like the content team was also under the dimension, like dimension content team. Then they would work on writing similar content. But yet, I think there will always be a silo part between the entire content team and the growth team, performance marketing team, you name it, because one of the teams is basically focusing on what is happening in real time on paid channels. One of the team is focusing on what might be happening in the future when it comes to SEO. And I know people will hate me for saying this, but everyone knows that if you make a content SEO friendly, like if you want to make a proper SEO friendly content, in most of the cases you need to some weird stuff like FAQs and other stuff. And like if I don't know, I promote FAQs on page side, it will never work. But unfortunately, it works on SEO. And like I'm not saying that the SEO people only write only create content about FAQs or like only create content for search engine. But unfortunately, they always need to be mindful of that fact as well. Like they cannot just focus on creating the best content and hope for the best. Like they need to apply the basic SEO fundamentals. But unfortunately, we cannot apply the same fundamentals in the paid side.
Yeah, I think especially if your target audience is like a marketer or a salesperson who, like, once they land on the page, if like they'll know immediately after reading the first couple of lines, like, okay, is this page optimized for SEO? Now then I'm not gonna read this, right? Like that's how I
I know,
consume my
man.
content.
Yeah, like as soon as I realized that okay, this content has been written by someone that doesn't even know what they were writing about, and I'm like, okay, I'm just bouncing.
Got it. Yeah. I think yeah, probably if you're going after if your target audience is probably not a marketer or someone who's tech savvy, right? Who understands all these nuances. If your target audience is not someone like that, then you probably have a little bit of more leeway, and you can probably get
Yeah.
away with a lot of that. But if you're selling to, say, marketers or sales folks who've been exposed to this like day in and day out, I think it will probably have to get a little bit more creative than uh, like what most people do, right? So
Yeah, 100%.
cool. So I think I want to talk a little bit about like the scaling side of things, right? Usually, what happens, at least what I've seen happen, is um, you start off with a Google Ads campaign because you want to capture all people who are already in the market, especially if there's some search volume and things like that, right? And then you start to introduce a paid social campaign, probably on LinkedIn or something like that. But uh, after a certain point, obviously things will start to plateau, right? As given that you've been at Cognism and you've seen like massive growth at Cognism, right? How did you think about scaling the demand gen programs over there? And like, were you sort of like able to proactively see that, okay, hey, we're probably starting to plateau in this specific segment or in this specific messaging that we're repeating? Like, how did you think about that? How did you sort of like realize that you're probably hitting that plateau?
So I have two answers for that. The first answer, if your demand gen program is really successful, you don't see that plateau because demand gen actually creates that engine. Like, okay, there's like enough demand that you can capture, and normally when once you capture the demand, it's over. But if you actually apply a proper demand gen program, that demand gen program will always be creating that demand, and then there will never be plateau. But in theory, that's correct. But also sometimes, even though your demand gen program is amazing, there's just not enough people in the market. Like, you cannot just beat the nature. But for that, what we did was to basically expand the audience. Like, okay, now our ICP is salespeople, but can we use this product for marketing persona? Can we use this product for RevOps? Can we use this product for CSMs? And the answers were always the yes. Obviously, we tried some other personas that didn't work, and I don't want to talk about them. But it was all about, okay, this is our persona, and it seems like we are hitting this persona, and our frequency levels are increasing. We are actually doing everything we can, and you can probably you also have other options. Like, you can always be like, you know what, my minimum audience size is like 200, I can try to go 50. Or like, I'm targeting the software industry, I can try to target retail. However, it is like, you got to choose what data tells you. Or like, sometimes data doesn't tell you anything, but you have to then trust your gut. And in our case, we knew that we could promote Cognism as a marketing product. We could promote Cognism as a reverse product. Uh, in my last year at Cognism, we then expanded to different industries like insurance, or like uh, delivery freight in the industry. Because, like, if you want to truly grow, if you want to experience the hyper growth, one industry will not help you. And like, obviously, from 0 to 1 and like 1 to 10 million, you need to find your niche and you need to master your industry. But like, if you are growing from 10 to 50 and 50 to 100, it cannot be with one industry, or it cannot be with one persona. Like, now Rippling is a $1 billion company, and they are like having 3 products to multiple people, multiple industries. ZoomInfo, unfortunately, they do the same thing. Like, ZoomInfo started with sales, then marketing, then HR, then now they do most of this stuff. And they're strict. Like, if you want to grow, you cannot just grow in one side of the market.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, after a point, you sort of like have the choice. You sort of have to take the decision between like, okay, hey, are we going to expand into a new persona, or are we going to expand into a new industry, or maybe it could be different regions as well, right? And or maybe it's about cross selling and upselling to existing customers and trying to make more revenue from there.
Yeah, but that part would be a long-term part. Like, you cannot just create the plan and assume that, okay, you are going to be increasing your pipeline by 20% if you upsell, or like if you do all of the cross-selling. Like, it needs to be a plan. It needs to be a plan that should be applied. But it when I think about the reality, your hands are most tied. Especially, like, I don't know, if you generate your customers in the last 3 4 months, they won't be in the upsell process. Or like, if your customers are already happy with your product, but they are not 100% adopting the product, they wouldn't be okay to with the idea with upselling. So it's a long-term plan, and it needs to be worked uh, coordinately with the CSM team and revenue team. But I think what marketing team can do on this side is limited.
Yeah, for sure. I think on the other side of the spectrum, like when it comes to scaling, right? So what usually happens is probably startups start with a small budget on say LinkedIn as a channel. They see some initial signs. right? And everybody gets excited. Okay, hey, it looks like this is working now. Let's just pour money there, right? But we know scaling isn't as simple as just okay, let's increase the budget. How do you think about budgeting for LinkedIn ads, especially when you're thinking about scaling? I know there's like a lot of factors, right? Like the audience size, the persona that you're going after. Can you talk us a little bit about like how you think about it, some frameworks that you might have for it?
Funny thing is that before this webinar, I was writing the new labs report and I was analyzing the data for Facebook. And like we see that the budget allocation for Facebook skyrocketed in the first quarter. It was like maybe 3-4x higher than the average of 2023. And it was because actually the return on investment was pretty decent. But then what we see in Q1 and Q2 that even though the budget was actually really high in Q1, it was just awful in terms of pipeline. And most of the MQLs actually were generated, but those MQLs did not convert. And it was because of the greed. Marketers thought Facebook was working, and since they thought it was working, they just put so much money. Maybe marketers didn't think that, but marketers have been made to think that by their C levels, by their finance teams, and they put so much money on Facebook, which ended up with a huge disappointment. And LinkedIn is the same. Like you need to be very careful with any budget increase, any kind of scaling. And to be fair, I always had a very conservative approach. Like I make the things work, and then I never ask for more budget. Always and always, like so far in my entire career, my bosses came and they told me we are going to give you more budget. And once that happens, it is easier because then you are like, okay, you are giving me this budget that I'm not asking for, but keep in mind that it is going to be hard to keep the return on investment the same. Like with Cognism, I think we did a great job. Like the budget increase was like 2.5x. And even though budget increase was 2.5x, we kept return on investment the same. At that point, at that scale, you don't actually look for an improvement in return on investment if you are spending like 1 million every month. What you look is to keep the same profitability. And for that, I think you need to be very careful because if you have like if you're spending 10K and if you are given 10K more, you cannot just increase the budget of every campaign equally. You need to understand what campaign is actually contributing to revenue, what campaign might not be contributing to revenue, like what kind of campaign you might be needing alongside them. And most of the people actually make similar mistakes. Like as soon as they get the budget, they start creating new campaigns before understanding which of their campaigns actually need more budget or like which of their campaigns could be stopped at that point. So like my framework when I get the new budget is to understand, okay, what are my current campaigns are performing, and like if I'm suffering with the deliverability, if I'm suffering from audience penetration on LinkedIn, it means that okay, I need to improve, I need to increase the budget of these campaigns. And then the next question, okay, but how much I need to increase? Then it's a simple calculation, like what is my cost per reach, what is my total audience size on LinkedIn. Let's decrease by 0.8 because we know that 20% of those audience will be inactive. And then okay, what is my audience penetration in the last month and in this quarter? Okay, if my audience penetration is like 50% out of like 8% with like $100 budget, probably I need to increase my budget around like $150 so that I can cover the rest 30% of it. And you need to do this for entire campaigns. Like if you have 1,000 campaigns, you have to do it for 1,000 campaigns. If you have 10 campaigns, okay, you are lucky. But once you understand every campaign gets the budget that they deserve, then you could think of expanding to new campaigns. And if you do so, again, my framework would be a demand gen framework, and like I would always start with remarketing campaigns, like a couple of remarketing campaigns, just if there's like low hanging fruits, just to capture that demand. Then product value, social proof, content, title ship, and like if with your current budget, if you only have like a product value and then a remarketing campaign, then okay, with your new budget, you need to consider like a content campaign or social proof campaign. If you have all five, and if you think that everything is great and you cannot just increase the budget more, because if you do so, the return on investment will not increase. And that was the problem that we had at Cognism. Like I was like, okay, you are giving me this budget, but unfortunately we cannot spend this budget. Like it was for the UK, and like I was like, the target market is here. We are already reaching the entire target market. We are doing everything in these campaigns. We cannot just stay in the same position. Like we need to expand. Like if you tell me that I can expand to a new industry, okay, we cannot spend this budget. If you tell me that we can now expand to a different side of companies, like different size of employees or different type of companies, yes. But with the current conjuncture, we cannot do that. But yeah, like if you see a new opportunity to expand, then that budget needs to be used for the expansion. If you don't see anything around there, and if you max out on LinkedIn, and also I'm assuming you are already maxed out on Google when it comes to competitor searches and high intent searches. For brand, I have mixed feelings. Like some people hate brand campaigns, some people love them. For me, it depends on your industry. Like Cognism, it was a must because we had like 8 different competitors that were bidding on us, and like if we didn't have the brand campaign, there would be 8 different campaigns, 8 different companies that were bidding on us. That was a must. That was not a necessity. But like if you are not in a really competitive market, if your competitors are not bidding on you, obviously you don't need to do brand. But yeah, if you max out on Google and LinkedIn, then you could try to explore different type of campaigns on LinkedIn or like different kind of channels. For example, on LinkedIn, you can try connected TV, you can try some document ads, because especially with connected TV, it is actually a different medium. Okay, it is LinkedIn, but it's a different medium because your audience might not necessarily be spending time on LinkedIn. But you still need to find a way to reach out these people. Connected TV basically helps you to do that. So like connected TV would be an approach, or like at Cognism we tried Spotify because we had the budget. Like we were already maxed out on Reddit, on Bing, on YouTube, on Quora, and we were like, okay, we need to do Spotify, and then we did Spotify.
Amazing. Because you brought up connected TV, it's one of those things that I've wanted to experiment, but I still haven't. Can you, if I remember correctly, I think you ran an experiment on connected TV. Can you talk a little bit about like what were your learnings? Who should run it? Who should not run it? Like things to consider, that sort of stuff. Because it's still new, right? There's not a lot of best practices and things like that. I don't see a lot of content even from LinkedIn. So I'm curious, like what your learnings were and how you went about it.
We are providing content for LinkedIn for them, so hopefully it will be large soon.
Amazing.
But yeah, with Connect TV, at first I thought it was just one of those features that LinkedIn people were hyping about. But when you think about it, again, you can actually explore a different side of it. For me, it wasn't necessarily the site that I needed to explore because my audience was already on LinkedIn. But I don't know if you have a B2B product, like let's assume that you are selling to 60-year-old accountants in the US. Probably these people are not spending so much time on LinkedIn. Maybe they have a LinkedIn account, but they're not spending so much time on LinkedIn. Okay, we as marketers, sales people, we are on LinkedIn all the time. But like imagine yourself selling to an accountant, like 60-year-old accountant, a B2B accounting enterprise software. LinkedIn, unfortunately, wouldn't be the best channel. Maybe Facebook, even Facebook would be better for the channel because, again, if you think about it, a 60-year-old accountant in the US would probably be working in their company for the last 20 years. Therefore, their company name on Facebook is probably the same, still the same. So, like, by actually filtering out those companies, you can reach out those people. Like, Facebook for those people might be a better channel than LinkedIn. But if they have a LinkedIn account, and if they don't spend time on LinkedIn, actually Connect TV gives you another medium. And like you can actually target them in the TV. And the best thing about it is that you still get to use all of the filters that LinkedIn normally provides, like in terms of company size, in terms of job titles and stuff. But also you can still use other features of LinkedIn as well. Like you can create an audience from the people who have engaged with your connected TV, like who have watched your connected TV campaigns, or like you can just retarget your own people in connected TV. If they engage with your content, you can just target them on connected TV. The second part is more suitable for the demand gen umbrella. Like, okay, people are already engaging with your content, and then you are creating another medium for a media machine. So they also now see you on the TV, perfect for the media engine. But there's also the first part of it. If your audience doesn't spend time on LinkedIn, now LinkedIn offers the another medium that you can reach out to them. And there's a huge chance that you can reach out to them. Unfortunately, it is only in the US still. But you literally get to reach out to them easily. But the problem with it is that you need to be making proper videos. Like you cannot just show your weird 360p videos. Like it needs to be a proper video because people have HD TVs. Like if you show them random videos, it will actually create a negative brand affinity. Or like you also need to think of the platform intent. You cannot just show your own product videos, or like you cannot be showing education in content because people are literally watching TV, watching their TV series at that point. Like maybe they're watching Game of Thrones, and you cannot just be like, okay, HockeyStack helps you close deals by this. No, you need to create a proper engaging content. So I think this is the hardest thing for B2B companies. You need to make sure that your content is not boring. It is really, it has quality, and it is suitable for TV.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, especially given that people are sitting in front of the TV, they're probably chilling, spending time with the family, finally getting some time to catch up on the latest TV series. And you can't be like, okay, hey, come buy this software that I'm building.
Yeah, imagine like you are watching TV and then you see my product. What do? You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I can't even imagine being in that situation, seeing a product ad, say asking me to come buy the product on TV. Sweet. I think I actually had one more follow-up question that I want to talk about, especially when it comes to the scaling side of things, the budgeting side, right? I think obviously any leadership team would be like super happy if you tell them that, like, hey, I don't need this extra budget that you're giving me, but I'll still be able to increase the pipeline, drive positive ROI from it and things like that. But um, on the flip side, right, if that is not the case, right, how do you sort of like help the leadership team understand that, hey, just because we are increasing the budget doesn't mean that we're going to immediately see an increase in pipeline, right? Like, because it is also important to help the leadership team understand that, okay, set the expectations over there and that sort of stuff as well. How do you usually approach that? Like, what do you typically advise marketers do when they are in that sort of a situation?
Run away. Uh, so yeah, that's the thing that has been the most challenging thing for me as well. And you learn it when you do it. It is one of those things. Like uh, it, like all of my average answers, it depends on various stuff. The first stuff, if if your management team actually understands marketing or not, then if the other teams understand what do you do, like because there will always, if you ask for more budget, there will always be this internal convo, like, do we need to hire more STRs, or like do we need to give that money to marketing, or like do we need to buy do we need to get a new AE, or like buy a new Zoom info, for example, or give that money to marketing. There's always that combo. But if you, like, I think it will be very cliche answer, very cheesy answer. But if you communicate what you are doing well internally, then people will understand what you need and what you do and what you need. And especially when you speak with sales people, when you speak with revenue people, if they understand what do you do, then you get what you need. Uh, but yeah, like the first part of the question, when I think of the first part of the question, the managing expectations for the long-term success, that's the hard part. That's the most challenging part. Because also in every company there's someone. It could be a HR person, it could be a finance people. Like there's always one guy who comes up with this great idea and say, okay, maybe we need to launch a white paper, maybe we need to sponsor an event. There's always this guy. Unfortunately, marketing has long been considered as a soft skill, and everyone has an idea about marketing. So you need to communicate what you are doing really well, and you need to keep your straight face. For me, that part has been the hardest part. That part has been the hardest part, and I still cannot do it. Like if someone comes up with a brilliant idea, I'm like, holy fuck, I haven't thought about it. I still do that. But yeah, there's always going to be someone with this approach, and once that happens, you need to be clearly communicate the long-term success. Okay, now this is what we are doing. If we do what you say, okay, we are going to be generating 100 leads in the next 30 days, then the conversion rate will be this, will be this, and will be this, and total revenue will be this. However, if we do this, we are basically investing, let's say demand generation campaign, we are investing on our brand. We are not going to be capturing the existing demand only, but we are going to be creating a sustainable engine. Therefore, we are not going to be having this convo with all of us ever again in 5 months. Uh, that is really helpful because, yeah, if you just need to communicate that the growth happens with long-term goals, and you cannot just, I don't know, turn on switch and expect everything will change, especially in the current B2B SaaS landscape.
Yeah, I think if we can have an entire session on its own, just to talk about internal marketing and how do
I will be
you.
cancelled. I will be cancelled. I cannot do that. I will be cancelled.
Awesome. So I think on that lines, right? I think when things are going great, I think as a marketer, you probably know internally that okay, hey, this quarter is great, but deep down, I also know that it's not going to be the same next quarter, right? And when you miss the targets, you want to tell that hey, it's probably because of the seasonality, but you don't want to say that either, right? How do you sort of like tackle that internally? I know it's sort of like connected to the internal marketing side of things that we just talked about, but I'm sure like every single marketer sort of like goes through this, especially on the performance marketing, the demand gen side of things, right? Because a lot of the times demand gen folks are sort of measured on like, okay, how much pipeline did we bring in today, or how much pipeline did we bring in this month, and all that stuff. So that's probably the most commonly asked question to a demand gen person.
Yeah, and that's literally why, honestly, that's literally why I started HockeyStack Labs. Like every CMO I work with, and like I work with more than 50 CMOs or like 50 VP marketings, they had the same question. Okay, what is happening? Why the numbers are so low? And like it's always like was the same situation. Imagine March at the end of quarter, amazing. Then April it is a bit slow, or like June, amazing. July a bit slow, and then they're like, oh my god, we need to change the entire GTM motion. Nothing's working, and like at first, and that is also something that splits experienced marketer with non-experienced marketers. And like I actually shared something on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about that graph. In the beginning, in earlier careers, you're like, okay, what the fuck is going on, and you just wait. In the middle of the career, you're like, okay, I'm going to be optimizing my campaign objectives. I'm going to be changing my bidding structure. You do everything. Then later, you're like, okay, I'm just going to wait. And now, when that happens, I'm like, okay, that's completely normal, and we just need to wait. Like in those areas, you need to be, unfortunately, a therapist, a psychologist for your boss. And you need to be calming them down. You need to be telling them, okay, it is not going to work, but it is not the end of the world. And honestly, that was the initial idea behind HockeyStack Labs. Because now we have the data, like we can just say like, okay, your data for this month could be low, but look at all of the other 108 companies. The data was low for them as well. And at this point, like HockeyStack Labs reports, the quarterly recap reports are my go-to resource, and not only for my own company or the companies that I'm advising for, but also when my friends ask me about what is happening, I just sent them the reports. But yeah, before that, it was all about, okay, I experienced a similar thing with another company, and it was seasonal, and now it is seasonal. Like, if you experience it for a couple of times, you are okay with, like, you don't feel terrified, you don't want to make a change, you just wait, you know that you just need to wait. But yeah, if you don't have enough experience, or like you didn't have that responsibility before, and it is your first time, if you're, I don't know, first time head of growth, first time CMO, you freak out. At that point, you need to experience that freak out. It's like, it actually is really helpful for your mental health. And once it happens, you know that, okay, it will happen again, and once it happens again, I shall be more relaxed.
Yeah, I think on the performance marketing side, right? Like, probably the hardest thing is to sort of like say that, okay, hey, I'm not going to make any change. That's probably the hardest thing ever, right? It's like, the minute something goes down, the immediate instinct is to like, okay, hey, let's make this change. Let's try and optimize this and all this stuff, right? So I think that's probably the hardest lesson for me, as well.
But also, this doesn't mean that everything you do is correct. This assumption is based on the fact that you should be checking what is going on every day. You should be checking your campaigns. You should be checking everything every day, and you are sure. Like, it doesn't mean that you are doing everything right, but it is based on an assumption that you are doing everything right every day.
Mm.
Like, I think a similar analogy could be like, imagine yourself being in a relationship. Someone tells you that your girlfriend is cheating on you, and if you are sure about your girlfriend, you'll be like, okay, she's not. But if you are not sure with what is happening with your relationship, you'll be like, okay, she cheated on me. And it is a similar approach. Like, if you are sure about what you are doing every day, then you know that it is not your problem.
Yeah, definitely. Constantly keep checking what's happening on your campaigns. Have a pulse on it for sure. Right. Um, I think I have a follow-up question because you said, this is the exact reason why you started HockeyStack Labs. Um, there's a obviously, me as a marketer, I find the data super helpful. It sort of helps me understand, okay, hey, are we heading in the right direction, right? That sort of stuff. But I'm also curious, like how HockeyStack Labs sort of like fits into your entire demand gen strategy, your ecosystem at HockeyStack.
Let's go back to what you said like a couple of 30 minutes ago. Content. Content is the key for demand gen. And you need to find your golden goose. For Cognism, the content, we had two content. For marketing, the content was demand gen, how we switch from lead gen to demand gen. That was our content. For sales, how to do cold calling. It was our content. For hockey stick, the content piece was the flow, all of the videos, the metrics from marketers, and it was the content to scale us from 0 to 1 million. But the content itself, even though it was creating the brand awareness, it was not actually creating the educational piece of it, and it was not creating the thought leadership piece of it. People would know the flow, but people would not know what hockey stick was. That was the problem. So then we were like, okay, we need to find that golden goose which would help us to scale from 1 million to 10 million. And we knew that, okay, the product is powerful, therefore the content should be able to communicate that power. And HockeyStack Labs was one of our couple of experiments that we were testing in the beginning of January. But it took up really well, and then it became our thing. Like, we were not sure if it was going to take off. We were not sure if it was going to be our thing, but it did. And now that I'm thinking, okay, it makes sense because we are a data company, we are providing data that nobody has, and it was the actually differentiation part. Like, not only we had that data, like LinkedIn didn't have that data, Facebook didn't have that data, Salesforce didn't have that data. Uh, and okay, we had that data and our competitors had that data. But what our competitors didn't have was me. And I'm not saying this in a cocky way, but they didn't have someone who had been exposed in like more than 100 ad accounts. Like, not only I was looking at data, I was analyzing data, but I also knew from my own background what kind of data I should be looking at and what kind of content that my CMOs would want. Like, my competitors, they also provide content, but read their content. It is just a content manager content. It is an SEO content. But my content is coming from someone who actually had the experience, and that has been the most amazing part about labs. We had two differentiation points, and we use both of them in the best way possible.
Yeah, I think as someone who's been consuming those reports regularly, I think I've found it like super helpful, and it sort of helps me when I'm going through that panicking phase, right? Okay, oh shit, what's happening? That sort of helps me calm my nerves, and it's sort of acting as a therapist for me, so to speak. So cool. I think we have only like a few minutes left, 5 minutes left, right? So folks in the audience, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we'll try to get that answered. Oh, so we have one question over here. What's your thoughts on day breaking for LinkedIn ads? Should ads be stopped on the weekend and during non-working hours? The reason is
Okay.
trying to increase share on desktop traffic.
Okay, now I have my serious face and it is getting serious. Never, and if anyone, any agency tells you that, they don't know LinkedIn. Yes, when you think about it, this needs to be done, but LinkedIn's APIs are clear. If you do that, you really hamper your campaign's deliverability. If you change your budget during the day multiple times, hampers the campaign deliverability. If you turn off your campaigns during the day, it hampers deliverability. Every kind of change, like constant changes on the budget, unfortunately hampers the campaign. Therefore, yes, you need to get better desktop traffic. You need to get your budget equally distributed during the day. But LinkedIn APIs do not favor that. And if you do that, it seriously damages your campaign deliverability.
Amazing. I know I've been one of those people who wanted to try that out. Right? See if we should pause campaigns on the weekends and see how that performs. Good to know that we shouldn't do that, and I haven't tested that out. So good to know that. Cool. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a question: what would be the best way to maximize desktop traffic then? So I have two things. One of them is proven. One of them is proven by LinkedIn. The other is not proven by LinkedIn, but it is proven by me. The first thing is basically the spotlight and text campaigns on the right hand side. They're desktop only, but obviously they don't communicate what you want to communicate, like static images or videos, unfortunately. The other thing you can do, so if you go with static or video images, LinkedIn offers three kind of sizes. You can do square. Square is more mobile friendly. You can do rectangular. Rectangular is more desktop friendly. Or you can do mobile vertical. It is only for mobile. So like if you do mobile vertical for videos and static, it is only for mobile. But if you want to do desktop, you can do rectangle. It is not only for the desktop, like it doesn't natively filters out the mobile, but LinkedIn algorithm then favors the user experience when it comes to rectangular images. So if you do rectangular, the deliverability for desktop will be better.
Amazing. Awesome. I think I've mostly favored the vertical version of it purely because it helps us from a CTR perspective. I see a better engagement, with our audience when it is mostly on mobile.
Yeah, and when I think about it, it covers the entire screen, so it makes sense. Oh, I think he's left. Hello everyone, now I am your host. And does anyone have any other questions?
Sorry about that.
Oh, you are well. Okay, I thought I was going to be the host.
Sweet. I had one last question from my end. I know you've been running some crazy experiments, including the giving away Teslas. Are there any other wacky campaigns that you've run before that we're probably not aware of? Any results, learnings that you can share from there?
Go to Spotify and write HockeyStack. We create an album for every influencer with the songs that they might like. For example, Liam Moroney, he's Irish. He got an Irish song. Dave Gerhardt, he likes Jay-Z because when he has a podcast, there's a Jay-Z post behind him. He got a Jay-Z song. All of the songs were made by AI. And you can still find the album on Spotify. It didn't work well, but we have an album on Spotify.
Amazing. That's another channel, I guess, to sort of like spread the word about HockeyStack, I guess.
Yeah.
Sweet, awesome. I guess we're at time. It's been amazing, Canberk. Thanks a lot for joining and sharing with us, your knowledge, your expertise on what it takes to scale demand gen programs. I know I've learned a lot of nuances that I probably wasn't aware of before. So this has been great. This has been super fun. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Vikash. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.